Welcome to More Patients, More Impact, More Income, the podcast for real holistic medical practitioners who want to grow their high-impact, high-income practice without selling out. And now, here's your host, Chris Axelrad.
Never ceases to amaze me how many practitioners will expect people to just show up in their office just because they're cool. You know, like it's like, oh, I'm an acupuncturist, I'm a naturopath. I know all this really cool stuff. Like, why aren't people coming to see me? We've talked a little bit in previous episodes about some of the ways to fix this kind of problem. You know, number one is to, really think about your message. Think about how you're going to speak to your market, to the people who actually are looking for help. Another thing you need to do is you need to pick people who have real problems, not just kind of like surface stuff, not stuff that's like a nice to have, but stuff that's like a must have. And when you have those two things, when you have a real problem and a message that really, really resonates and speaks very directly to the people who need your help, you've done a lot of the groundwork. And I want to applaud you for that. Because again, 95% or more of people in this industry just focus on themselves. They don't think about and they don't take the time to sit down and really, really think, really, really go deep into the needs of their market. I was riding around with my dad the other day. My dad's a retired physician, and he and I were talking. One of the things that I'm trying to do right now is start a pediatric clinic. Now, I've never run a pediatric clinic. My clinic has been a specialty clinic in endocrinology and fertility since 2004. And this is a new thing. It's a whole new market. It's a whole new mindset that I'm having to learn how to think about. And I'm doing a lot of work trying to, and so is the person that's going to be helping me out, who is actually going to be treating the kids. Because another thing, we'll talk about this sometime in a later episode, but another thing about owning a practice is realizing that you can't do everything. You don't want to do everything. And that it's very important to find other people who are going to help you. It's funny because like so many of the people that I've hired are actually better than me at a lot of the stuff. And if it wasn't for them, there's no way that I would have achieved the level of success that I've been able to get to. So it's really important not to, and this kind of goes to the same topic of thinking about ourselves, worrying about ourselves, thinking that we're the ones that know how to do everything the best and all that kind of stuff, as opposed to just focusing on like, what need can I fill? What need can I provide? Not want, not desire, but need can I fill in my community? And my dad and I were driving around and we were talking about, he was asking me, how's it going with the pediatric practice? And I told him, yeah, we're working on it. I mean, we've got patients every week. We've got a few patients every week. And I'm just, in the process of trying to refine the message and trying to find the right audience online to, where I could put the message and get the word out in the right way and hit the right notes so that people understand the value of what we're offering and the need. And really, again, speaking to people who are really, really looking for help, who aren't getting the help that they need in the current channels that they're looking for help. But my dad, I didn't even say that, though. I wasn't speaking that language. I just was trying to keep the conversation about it pretty basic. And so I was just telling him, yeah, we're working on it. We're trying to figure out, how to market it and how to, get things going. But it's definitely going. And he's like, well, you know what? I think that's a real need. I think that's a real need. And if you can fill that need, you're going to be very successful. And, it just validated for me. And really, number one, my father built a very successful medical practice on, he's a retired urologist. And I know for a fact, you talk about people who need, obviously someone who's, unable to urinate is going to die if they aren't treated. Someone who has a severe kidney infection, someone who has severe kidney stones, or some other form of urinary disease, obviously there's a need to see a doctor for that. And so he understands the concept that you have to fill a need in order to succeed. There's a nice little rhyme for us. You have to fill a need in order to succeed. Remember that. Very important. So the key is now you've got your message, now you've got your problem. You're starting to figure out, okay, this feels good. I really feel good about this. I've defined the problem. I know who I want to help. What's the next step? We've got to get your message out there. People have to see it. People have to see your message. We can't just think about it and hope that people show up. Hope is the worst marketing and business strategy that you could ever implement. Hope is not a marketing strategy. What we need to do is we need to find very intentional channels upon which to transmit this message, and preferably to transmit the message to people who are very likely to actually have the problem that we want to solve. So in my case, as someone who does endocrinology and reproductive, my audience is primarily women. So that right there, I know that I need to get my message in front of females. Now, as far as the endocrinology and the reproductive side of things, we're looking at females who are what? Of reproductive age. We don't treat a lot of teenagers here, but I have treated many teenagers over the years who are of reproductive age, whose mothers bring them in, or if they're adults, if they're 18, 19, sometimes they come in on their own to get help with menstrual issues or some other hormonal problem. And then, of course, a lot of the patients that I've treated over the years for reproductive, they range in age from early 20s all the way up to early 40s. And that gives me a very clear idea of who I'm speaking to and where my message needs to be broadcast. The most powerful tool for getting your message out there that a lot of people don't think about, or a lot of people are afraid to use, honestly, because just like most people are too wrapped up in themselves, their own opinions, their own fears about what other people are going to think, their own, image of themselves and how cool they are with all their certifications, and making sure, honestly, that they're impressing their colleagues and they're not thinking about their market. Just like most people do that, most people don't want to spend money to market their practice. Most people want to do everything on the cheap. And let me tell you something, money is energy. Money is like anything else. If you're in the acupuncture field, you know that we are taught that energy has a flow, and that when energy isn't flowing, that energy is not circulating, then there is no health, there is no strength, there is no growth. And money is an energy, and it needs to circulate in order for you to grow, in order for you to expand. And advertising is one of the most powerful ways to get the word out to your market. And here's another thing, is that people will not spend any time thinking about their message, not spend any time thinking about the problem they want to solve. And they'll run an ad that's kind of got this kind of half-assed message and doesn't really speak to anyone in particular, and they don't get any response from it. And then they think that, ads suck. It's a waste of money. The key is that no, actually, if your message sucks, doesn't matter how much money you spend on advertising, you're not going to actually resonate with anybody. You're not going to attract anybody. So you can waste money on advertising. There's absolutely no doubt that you can waste money on advertising. The other thing is, when you advertise, you do have to be willing to invest in experimentation, okay? Because there are the unicorns out here who run their very first ad and hit a home run. One of my clients, who for years branded herself as a women's health expert, and did okay. She did okay. I mean, she was seeing about 25 patients a week when she and I first spoke, and she joined my program, and I started to work with her on her message, and we nailed it down to a specific problem, and we put together her landing page on her website, and I helped her get her ads together, and in particular, a Google AdWords campaign, which, by the way, Google AdWords is the most powerful way to get very motivated patients into your practice. Because why? Because if you know the problem and you have a resonant message and you know how to set up the keywords around that problem, then you will have people who search for you and find you. And there's nothing more powerful than that. There's nothing more powerful than somebody in the moment who is searching for help, finding you. I have a whole story about that, which I'll tell you in a second. But this client of mine, we set up her AdWords campaign, her very first AdWords campaign, and it hit. Like, she started getting 5 inquiries a week, every week, solid. And she was only spending about $20 a day. Okay. So some people freak out like, oh my God, $20 a day. Well, think about it. That's $140 a week. In terms of my practice, what we currently charge, that would be roughly 2 patient visits would cover that amount. So what she was doing essentially was taking the money from 2 patients and flipping it into creating 5 new patients. And that's what you do when you have ads. That's the power of ads. The ads can help you multiply your investment, but you have to actually advertise the right way, and you have to have a message that actually works. And you have to be willing to play with it for a little while. Sometimes it takes 1, 2, 3 months of kind of tweaking it a little bit. And this is not rocket science. There's a lot of common sense involved, but you do have to know how to do it, and that's something that I teach people how to do. But you have to learn how to tweak things and mess with things. It's just like this. You would never expect, I don't care what your field is in terms of the medicine that you practice. If you expect your very first attempt at treating somebody and helping somebody to just completely cure them in one day, then I think you're being completely unrealistic. And if that's your standard, you're just going to give up, because that's almost never going to happen. Okay. It's just going to be brutal for you to be doing your work, because you're going to continually be let down by your own shortcoming, which isn't even really a shortcoming, just an unrealistic expectation. So with advertising, it's the same thing. It's an unrealistic expectation to just throw money into ads and expect an immediate return. Just like we would with a patient, we need to kind of have a plan, have an objective. We need to come up with our best attempt and really take the time to actually, create something cool, and then put it out there and see what the response is. Just like you would give your patient a treatment plan, and then they come back and we ask them, so how are you feeling? What's going on? To see what the response is. Same thing with ads. See what the market says. The market is going to tell you if your message resonates or not. And if it does, awesome. Awesome. If it doesn't, then that's okay. We need to look at, what is the issue? Is it the audience? Are we targeting the wrong audience? And targeting on Google AdWords is a little more nebulous, but you can target certain audiences on Google simply by using certain keywords, using certain language in your ads that's more attractive to certain audiences and certain types of people. This is why we have to think about the people that we're targeting. We have to, again, really gain insight and take time to really get to know them, because we're going to have to learn how to think like them so that we can then write ads that we, with a high degree of confidence, that we can put out there and know that it's going to catch their attention, and it's going to make sense to them, and it's going to actually attract them to click on the link.
If you're ready to fill your practice and keep it full without the stress and overwhelm, Then get instant access to your free autopilot patient attraction playbook now at www.highimpactpracticesystems.com/autopilot.
So it could be your audience, it could be the copy in your ad, it could be your keywords, and it could be the language on the page that they land on from your ad. All of those things can be evaluated and looked at and improved upon. And no, it doesn't take like 10 hours of laborious work to do that. Sometimes it's just a simple change in turn of one little phrase. And it's an intuitive process, and you have to be willing to, and this is why mindset is so important, because you have to be willing to trust in your instincts as you're tweaking these things. I mean, of course, if you're in my program, I give you guidance. You can ask me questions. You get the support of all the people in my program who are actually doing it and who are succeeding at it. But if you're doing it on your own, it's the same principle of just needing, just need to learn how to trust your instincts, be willing to experiment. And yes, initially you will not get an immediate return necessarily. But again, would you expect to invest $10 in the stock market and then 3 days later have $100? I mean, that happens, but it's the unicorn. Would you expect to take a class in your chosen field of study, acupuncture, naturopathy, whatever, and then expect to be a master? No, right? Same thing with ads. But if you can be fearless enough to invest some money to learn how to do it, once you learn how to do this, the power is insane. Let me explain to you, like with my clinic right now, well, literally I started running Google AdWords in 2006. So I opened my practice in 2004. I was working my full-time software job at the time. So not a real sense of urgency for money, but definitely a sense of urgency kicked in about 2 years later. Like, you know what? Like, it wasn't happening just organically like I thought it would. I wasn't getting the word of mouth that I wanted. And a lot of that was just because I didn't have the time to devote to going out and doing a bunch of stuff because I was working a full-time job. So I started looking for, how can I leverage my time? How can I get the word out there? And someone who I worked with mentioned Google AdWords. So I looked into it, and I was like, you know what, let me try this out. I think partially because I'm a good writer, because I've spent a lot of time writing. If you've read any of my stuff on my website or my blog, then you know that I've written a lot. Partially maybe because I was a good writer, but also partially because I really just instinctively knew what my audience was looking for. I put my first Google AdWord out. It was for fertility. I think back on it and I'm like, man, instinctively, there was a very emotional message that I put together. It wasn't all about evidence and facts and figures and trying to prove. My message, and even in the ad, was all about pain. It was all about, are you tired of going in circles? Are you tired of what you're doing isn't working? Blah, blah, blah. And my page, same thing. My page was very much about their desire and their fears and their frustrations. And I'm going to tell you something. I started running that ad, and within 2 days, we had our first new patient. 3 days after that, we had another one. And within a few weeks, we were consistently getting 3 to 5 new patient inquiries every single week. And I was not spending that much money. This was back in 2006. It was a lot cheaper than it is now. It's a little more expensive now because a lot more people have figured out that it's powerful. And so you just have more competition for the space. So you're going to pay more for it, just like real estate. But I ran that same ad with the same keywords for like 8 years. And the revenue that we generated off of that one ad, and then the word of mouth that came from the people who came in through the ad and then told their friends, was like monumental. We're talking over $1 million over a period of 8 years. Okay, that was the turning point for my practice. And it was really what allowed me to grow my practice to the point where I was able to quit my job in 2008, 2 years later. So that's what a game changer advertising can be. But you have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to spend some money, and you have to be willing to make sure that you put your message together first, and make sure that you're ready for that traffic. Don't just drive traffic to some ambiguous kind of general thing that you're really leaving it up to your prospect to try to connect all the dots themselves. You really need to drive that traffic. You need to drive that click to a page that is crystal clear and speaks directly to them and their problem. So they don't have to connect any of the dots themselves. You've already connected all the dots for them. There's another aspect to this that people don't think about, but is also very important. And again, it goes back to mindset, which is it's scary to put yourself out there. It's scary to say, you know what, I can help you with this serious problem, and feel confident in yourself, especially if you haven't been busy yet, or if it's a problem that you've seen a few cases, but now you're going to put it out there that, yes, I help people with this problem, and you're going to have strangers contacting you, people who are not associated with the circle that you already have established. See, the easiest thing to do is to build a practice on word of mouth, and there's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, there are people who have been very successful doing that. But it sort of puts you into a bubble where every single person that shows up in your office has been referred and has received what I call the transfer of trust. Meaning that if somebody says to them, hey, you know what, you should go see so-and-so because they're awesome. When they show up in your office, they've already been primed with a message from someone else they trust that says that they should trust you. So there's really no need whatsoever to have any type of process to take somebody from not knowing who you are to trusting you in a very short amount of time. So it's a very different thing when you start to advertise. You're putting yourself out there and you're attracting people into your ecosystem that are not familiar with you, that don't know you, that are strangers. But the thread that you're attracting them on is their pain and their problem. It's really, really important to know that when you put yourself out there as an expert to help people with specific problems, you dramatically, exponentially increase the chance that those people are going to actually want to connect with you. But you have to do it in a way that's genuine. You have to do it in a way that is actually speaking from a place of kindness and compassion, but at the same time, a place of knowledge and wisdom. Because people will sense then, and the strangers that see your stuff based on advertising, they're not going to be able to fully trust you until they meet you. But if you orchestrate and you construct this process in the right way with the right sequence, from the ad to your target, which could be a video, could be a landing page, could be a free talk. Those are my 3 paths. I have a model or a process that I call the 3 paths, 1 gate. We may get into that sometime later. I teach it in my program. We may get into it in the podcast, but the path of the free talk is a great way to advertise, get people into a free talk. Of course, there's the direct path of just an advertisement and then getting them in to do a consultation. But the key is that when you're bringing strangers into your ecosystem, you do have to have a proven process that you can use. Whether you create the process yourself and prove that it works, or whether you take a proven process that someone else can teach you, such as myself, I can teach you a very proven process that we use every day in my clinic to take somebody who's never heard of us before, sees us through an ad, books an appointment, and then comes in and meets with us. And by the end of a 10-minute or 15-minute consultation, they are fired up to work with us. And the trust has been generated. And it's a real, authentic trust. That's why I talk about I'm not teaching you marketing that requires you to sell out. I'm teaching you how to do this in a way that is authentic, in a way that actually positions you as a real force for change, as a real healer, as a real transformational beacon for people to come and connect with. And when they come and connect with you and they meet you and you work your magic in terms of this process that I call opening the gate, where we really create this, it's just a magical mind frame. You can call it that. It's a frame that we help generate to help them understand that there's a way out, and to help them, to give them the opportunity to reach out and say, yes, I'm ready for you to help me. This is not a push. It's not persuasion. It's not high pressure. It's none of that. It's a very genuine offer of help. And trust me, when you set this up the right way, with the right language, with the right advertising medium, with the right language in your ads and the right language on the ad target, if that's a landing page, video, whatever, when you set that all up the right way, you build resonance and you plant the seeds of that trust. And then when they come in and meet with you and we do this amazing process, they go from stranger who is checking you out and thinks maybe you're the real deal to absolutely knowing that you are the real deal in 10 minutes. Okay. So I think in the next episode, we'll talk a little bit about this psychology. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about opening this gate in your patient's mind and not pushing them through and not persuading and cajoling and trying to give them incentives, but really opening that gate so that they can make a genuine self-initiated commitment to follow you, to follow you. We'll talk about the difference of that between to just be your patient versus to be your follower. Totally different mindset, totally different process. And I think that the latter, when you see your patient as your follower and you as leader versus them as patient and you as fixer, that is what really flips the script and makes this process even more amazing and more transformational and more powerful, and builds your practice around a genuine need in your community, a genuine need for a real, transformational, caring, kind, and loving force that is going to be that beacon for them. Because I'm telling you, it's tough out here. Like I've said before, it's a desert out here in terms of healers that are really, really, truly invested in the holistic victory of their patients, of the holistic emergence of their patients' power. There's just so few of us out here. So when people find us, again, it's like finding the oasis in the desert. And when you are that oasis for them, when you embody that oasis for them, they're going to tell everybody about you. Because when people find the real water, they want to share it with everyone they possibly can that they love. So that's going to be all for today. It's been a good one. If anything that I want you to take away from this is this: be real, be kind, and think ahead of time and set up a process that is going to change and open your prospect's mind. More than anything else, that is what is going to initiate their powerful healing process with you, so that you have the kind of impact that you want to have. And trust me, when you are attracting 5 patients to you every single week through ads, and you have this process that opens their mind to the possibility of their transformation, so you have the patience and you have the impact, you will naturally generate, more income than you ever thought was possible.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.